Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, today's lecture is on quantitative genetics. Thus far, we were studying about the qualitative characteristics, but from today's lecture, we will be focusing on the quantitative genetics. And in this lecture, we will focus on the relation between genotype and phenotype, types of quantitative characteristics, polygenic inheritance, and then an example of kernel color in wheat, and at the end, determining gene number for a polygenic trait. So, we already know that uh, quantitative or discontinuous characteristics have only a few distinct phenotypes, as in the case of Mendelian uh, inheritance in the pea plant, we have already seen 7 different traits. So, these traits are the types which were studied by the Mendel. So, Mendel focused on the discontinuous characteristics or qualitative characteristics, and however, many characteristics vary continuously. So, continuous variation along the scale of a measurement is present in many quantitative characteristics, and because of this continuous variation, there are many overlapping phenotypes for those traits. So the traits that are continuously varying and they have many overlapping phenotypes, they are referred to as continuous characteristics, and they are also known as the quantitative characteristics. So because any individual's phenotype must be described with a quantitative measurement, so we can say that they are quantitative characteristics. And examples of quantitative characteristics may include height, weight, and blood pressure in the case of humans, and growth rate in mice, as well as seed weight in plants, and milk production in cattle, as well as food content in different crops. For example, oil quantity produced by the corn plants. So there are many different quantitative traits which we are dealing nowadays. So in this figure, we can easily look at differences among discontinuous characteristics and continuous characteristics. So in the case of discontinuous characteristics, there are uh, distinct phenotypes. For example, in the case of this plant, plants are either dwarf or they are tall, and we can plot these numbers, and we can see that tall uh, plants are either tall or either they are dwarf, and their numbers are plotted against the y-axis, and phenotype is given on the x-axis. So there are distinct phenotypes, and we can easily distinguish among tall and dwarf height of the plant. But in the case of continuous characteristics, a continuous characteristic exhibit a continuous range of different phenotypes. For example, in this example, there are plants with different heights. This plant is dwarf, this plant is tall, and this is an intermediate plant is with an intermediate height. And in these three plants, there is also a slight variation in the height. So these types of variations are considered as continuous traits. So because we cannot distinguish between these phenotypes, and just like the unlike the discontinuous characteristics. So when there is a continuous variation, then these traits are known as the continuous traits. And we can plot this, uh, and we can see that there are two extremes, dwarf and tall, but there are many other variable phenotypes which are present, and we cannot easily distinguish among those variations. So we can say that these characteristics are continuous traits. So quantitative characteristics arise from two phenomena, and first one is for many are polygenic. They are influenced by genes at many loci. So many genes are involved in creating the uh, phenotypes, variable phenotypes. So if many loci take part, many genotypes are possible, because when there are two genes, we have three genotypes, and we have one locus. When we have one locus, we have three genotypes, and similarly, when the number of loci will increase, number of genotypes will also increase, and there are many genotypes for quantitative characteristics. So each genotype produces slightly different phenotype. So that slight difference is which we are unable to account for. So because of this, we are counting these as quantitative traits. So second phenomena is the quantitative characteristics often arise when environmental factors, environment is also playing its part, and when environmental factors affect the phenotype, and because environmental differences result in a single genotype producing a range of phenotypes. So this is now a complexity is arising because of the number of increasing number of loci. So most continuously varying characteristics are both polygenic and influenced by environmental factors. So these two phenomena, number of genes, increased number of genes, and the influence of environmental factors, these are all playing their part in producing the variable phenotypes in quantitative characteristics, and these characteristics are said to be multifactorial. When environment is also playing its part and multiple genes are involved, then these traits are known as multifactorial traits. So now coming towards the relation between genotype and phenotype. So for many discontinuous characteristics, there is a relatively straightforward relation between genotype and phenotype. So a single genotype is associated with a single phenotype, as in the case of Mendelian plants and in many other organisms, we have seen the examples. So there were straightforward relations between genotype and phenotype. So each genotype produces a single phenotype, and most phenotypes are encoded by single genotype. Dominance and epistasis may also allow two or three genotypes to produce the same phenotype, but the relation remains relatively simple. So when relation is simple, we can easily assign different phenotypes to different genotypes. So this simple relation between genotype and phenotype allowed the Mendel to decipher the basic rules of heredity uh, when he was performing crosses with different character involving different traits of pea plants. So it also permits us both to predict the outcome of genetic crosses and to assign genotypes to individuals when we are dealing with the uh, discontinuous characteristics. But for the quantitative characteristics, this relationship between genotype and phenotype is not so simple. Rather, it is often more complex. So, if the characteristic is polygenic, then many different genotypes are possible, and several of which may produce the same phenotype. So, several genotypes may produce the same phenotype. Now, let us consider an example. So, for example, consider a plant whose height is determined by three loci A, B, and C, and each has two alleles. There are three loci, three genes, and these three genes, each of these three genes has two alleles. So now we assume that one allele at each locus A, B, and C encodes a plant hormone that is causing the plant to grow 1 centimeter above its baseline height of 10 centimeters. So the second allele at each locus A minus, B minus, and C minus encodes no hormone and does not contribute to additional height. So in at these three loci there are two alleles at each locus, and A plus allele is coding for a hormone that is responsible for in growing the height of plant to 1 centimeter above its baseline height. So when there will be no hormone, height will be 10 centimeter, and when there will be a dose of hormone, then 1 centimeter height will be produced. And when at these loci A minus alleles, B minus allele, or C minus allele are present, then there will be no hormone present. So these and when the hormone is not present, it does not contribute to additional height. So now consider only the two alleles at a single locus. And if we consider single locus, then at the single locus we have total two alleles, and these two alleles produce three genotypes: A plus A plus, A plus A minus, and A minus A minus. So if all three loci are taken into account, then we can calculate that there are total 27 possible genotypes. So although there are 27 genotypes, they produce only 7 phenotypes. There are 7 different heights of the plants: 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 centimeter height. So there are many genotypes, but the encoded phenotypes are only 7. So it means that there are uh, some heights are encoded by more than one genotype. So some of the genotypes produce the same phenotype, and we'll also look in the table. So for example, genotypes, when there is a plus allele present uh, from either of the genes or either of the three genes, so all have one gene that encode plant hormone, and these genotypes produce one dose of the hormone, and the plant is having 11 centimeter height. So this 11 centimeter height is produced by these three genotypes. So look at carefully at this table, that when we have uh, no plus allele, then we are having zero doses, and because of this zero dose, height is baseline, it is 10 centimeter. But with the increasing number of doses, when one dose is present, then it will produce one dose of hormone, and result in 1 centimeter increase in height. So for 11 centimeter height, we have three genotypes. So either of the three gene is present, a plus gene from either of the locus is present in these three genotypes. The A plus is present in this genotype, B plus is present in this genotype, and C plus is present in this genotype. So these three genotypes are giving rise to a single phenotype. Similarly, when two doses are present, it means that two plus alleles are present in each genotype. So in all these genotypes, two doses of hormone are present, and they are making the plant to 12 centimeter height. And similarly, all others, when three doses are present, then 13 centimeter. When four doses are present, 14, then 15. And when all the plus alleles are present, then 16 centimeter height will be produced. So even in this simple example for only three loci, the relation between genotype and phenotype is quite complex. So with the increasing number of genotypes, complexity starts arising. So more loci encoding a characteristic, the greater the complexity. So the influence of environment on a characteristics also can complicate the relationship between genotype and phenotype. So because of environmental effects, the same genotype may produce a range of potential phenotypes, and this is known as the norm of reaction. We have already discussed in previous lecture. So the phenotype, uh, single phenotype can be assigned to many different genotypes when environment has its role also. So the phenotypic ranges of different genotypes may overlap, and then it makes difficult to know whether the individuals differ in phenotype because of genetic or environmental differences. So when it is not clear, then phenotypes may overlap. As we can see in this figure, that for quantitative characteristics, each genotype may produce a range of possible phenotypes. So we have uh, in this example, we have three genotypes: capital A, capital A, capital A, small a, and small a, small a. So these three are clear, but there are some other phenotypes. And for example, we cannot assign a genotype to this. So it is impossible to know whether an individual with this phenotype is genotype capital A or capital A small a. So these slight differences which we are unable to identify, and we are unable to assign an exact genotype to the phenotype. So this variation is attributed to the continuous uh, characteristic or quantitative characteristic. So when the number of genes are arising, and the complexity is also arising, and number of phenotypes also increases, and when environment has its role also, then it further complicates the uh, phenotype genotype relationship. So now coming towards the types of quantitative characteristics, a continuous characteristic can theoretically assume any value between two extremes. So there are two extremes. For example, in the case of height of the plant, tall and dwarf are two extremes, and other variable phenotypes can fall among these two uh, extremes. The number of phenotypes is limited only by our ability to precisely measure the phenotype. So, for example, human height is a continuous characteristic because within certain limits people can theoretically have any height. So although the number of phenotypes possible with the continuous characteristics are infinite, we often group similar phenotypes together for convenience. So, for example, we may say that two people are both 5 feet and 11 inches tall, but when their tallness or their height is carefully measured, then it may show that one is slightly taller than the other, but this difference is slight and it is not uh, easily distinguishable from the other one. So in this way this trait is quantitative trait. So some characteristics are not continuous because uh, they are not continuous but are nevertheless considered quantitative because they are determined by multiple genetic and environmental factors. For example, meristic characteristics are measured in whole number, and its example is the litter size in mouse. If a female mouse may have 4, 5, or 6 pups, but we cannot say that it will have 4.13 or 4.5 pups. So a meristic characteristic has a limited number of distinct phenotypes, but the underlying determination of the characteristic may still be quantitative. So these characteristics must be analyzed with the same techniques that we use for studying continuous characteristics, because the factors which are involved in producing this difference in litter size, they are all continuous factors. So another type of quantitative characteristics is threshold characteristic, and threshold characteristics uh, means that they are simply present or absent. So when we look at uh, this type of quantitative characteristic, so we can say that the absence and present can be a discontinuous or qualitative trait. But among threshold characteristics, although they exhibit only two phenotypes, they are considered quantitative because they are also determined by multiple genetic and environmental factors. So the expression of the characteristic depends on underlying susceptibility that varies continuously. So when the susceptibility is larger, then the threshold value a specific trait is expressed. So diseases are mostly threshold characteristics because there are many factors that are involved, both genetic and environmental. They contribute to disease susceptibility, and if enough of the susceptibility factors are present, disease will develop. Otherwise, it will remain absent. There will be no disease. So, in the case of threshold characteristics, presence and absence of the disease, for example, if we are dealing with a disease, so the absence or presence of the disease is not simply uh, dependent on one or two factors. So there are many factors which are contributing in causing the disease. So when a certain threshold is achieved, then a person will be diseased, and if that threshold is not met, then the disease will be absent. So this is the second type of uh, quantitative trait, and we can see in this plot that when uh, a person is a specific threshold is not achieved, a person will remain normal, and when that threshold has been crossed, then the individual will be dise- diseased and person will have the disease. So there are different number of individuals, and in many individuals we can see that many factors can be present, but until and unless the threshold is not achieved, the person is said to be normal, and after the achievement of this threshold, the person will be deceased. So there is also uh, a difference between uh, phenotype, and this variation is continuous. So these continuous variation in the factors which are involved in attaining this threshold. So there are many factors, a range of factors are present, but the disease will be occurring when this threshold is crossed. So these are the threshold characteristics. So now coming towards the polygenic inheritance. So we know that there is rediscovery of Mendel's work in uh, 1900. It provided a cohesive theory of inheritance, but the characteristics that Mendel studied were only discontinuous traits. So questions soon arose about the inheritance of continuously varying traits. So these characteristics have already been the focus of a group of biologists and statisticians, and they were led by the Francis Galton, who were known as the uh, biometricians. So they examined the inheritance of some quantitative characteristics, for example, human height, intelligence, and they used different statistical procedures to analyze the inheritance of these traits. So the results of their studies showed that quantitative characteristics are inherited. So although the mechanism of inheritance was yet unknown, but they are inherited. They showed that these characteristics are inherited traits. So after the Mendel's work was rediscovered, a bitter dispute also broke out about the about this idea that whether Mendel's principles are applicable to quantitative characteristics or not. So some scientists argued that the inheritance of quantitative characteristics could not be explained by the Mendelian principles, whereas there were other people who felt that Mendel's principles uh, are acting on the numerous genotypes could adequately account for the inheritance of quantitative characteristics. So there was a dispute among the scientists of those times that Mendel's rules of heredity are not applicable to the quantitative traits, and some were of the view that these rules are, when they are applied to various genes, they can adequately account for the inheritance of quantitative traits. So this dispute continued, uh, and this conflict then began to be resolved by the work of Wilhelm Johnson, who showed that continuous variation in the weight of beans was influenced by both genetic and environmental factors. And George Udneyul, a mathematician, he also proposed in 1906 that several genes acting together could produce continuous characteristics. So this hypothesis was later confirmed by Nielsen, and he was working on wheat and tobacco plants, and by Edward East also, who was working on the corn plants. So this argument was finally laid to rest in 1918 when Ronald Fisher demonstrated that the inheritance of quantitative characteristics could indeed be explained by the cumulative effect of many genes and each following the Mendel's rules. So, when uh, studying the quantitative traits, uh, when many genes are involved, so cumulative effect of all those genes is involved in causing the variation, but each gene individually is following the Mendel's rules. So Mendel's rules are of heredity are applicable to quantitative traits also when they are separately considered. So now coming towards an example of kernel color in wheat. So to illustrate how multiple genes acting on a characteristic can produce a continuous range of phenotypes, so let us examine one of the first demonstration of the polygenic inheritance. So Nelson Ahle studied kernel color in wheat and found that the intensity of red pigmentation was determined by three unlinked loci, and each of these loci had two alleles. So Nelson obtained several homozygous varieties of wheat that differed in the color. So when scientists start working on the different traits of plants, they first of all obtain the homozygous varieties, pure breeds. So like Mendel, he performed crosses between the homozygous varieties and studied the ratios of phenotypes in the progeny. So, in one experiment, he crossed a variety of wheat that possessed white kernels. So, white kernel uh, plants were uh, crossed with the uh, purple or very dark red kernels, and he obtained the results. So, in the parental generation, white plants were crossed with purple plants, and in the F1 generation, all the plants were with red colors, red kernel color, and in the F2 generation, there are five different phenotypes. So 1 by 4 are purple kernels, 4 by 1 by 16 and are with purple kernels, 4 by 16 plants with dark red kernels, and 6 by 16 are red kernels, 4 by 16 are light red kernels, and one plant was with white kernels. So there are uh, two loci, and these two loci are producing five different phenotypes. So this trait can be considered as quantitative variation because multiple phenotypes are present, and these phenotypes are uh, coded by two genes. Variable genotypes are involving uh, two genes. So if we look at the uh, genotype, just like our hypothetical example, uh, when four plus alleles were present, these presence of four plus alleles results in four doses of the enzyme, and purple color is produced. And similarly, when three doses are present and three doses are present in these two genotypes, then dark red color is produced. And similarly, when two doses are present and for the doses we have these three genotypes, this will give rise to red color. And when there is only one dose and these two genotypes are giving one dose, and this one dose produces light red color. And when there is no dose of the uh, pigment, then pigment is not present, then white white kernel color plants will be produced. So this variation is also considered as the quantitative variation. And when we will be looking at uh, separately, so now let us have a look at the cross of which involve the uh, mm, kernel color in wheat plants. In the parental generation, we have two plants. One is with dark color, and other with the, this is purple and this is white plant. This is dominant and this is these are all dominants, and this is recessive. Both are pure breeds. So in the F1 generation, all are heterozygous. So uh, now we can uh, break the this cross, and we can consider both genes separately. So when we will consider both genes separately, we will get different ratios, Mendelian ratios. For example, for the A locus, when two heterozygous parents are crossed, then our ratios are 1 to 1. So these ratios are 1 to 1. And similarly, when uh, this second locus parents are crossed, so considering this separately, similar ratio is produced just like the first locus. 1 uh, 1 to 1 ratio is produced. So when we will look at the F2 generation results, we will see that when we'll combine all these results, this A plus has 1 by 4 ratio. When this 1 by 4 ratio plant are combined, when this genotype is combined with all this one, and this one, this B plus B plus B plus B minus and B minus B minus, so we can calculate the probability by we already know the multiplication rule of probability, and we can easily calculate the probability of different phenotypes. So when this A plus is combined with the B plus B plus, so multiplying 1 by 4 by into 1 by 4, we can get that 1 by 16 will be having A plus B plus genotype, and color will be purple, just like the parental generation. And similarly, all other genotypes can be very easily calculated. So uh, it is clear from this that Mendelian ratios are applicable to the quantitative ratios. And F2 ratio will be uh, when combining different phenotypes. We can see that in the, if we look at the previous slide, there are different colors, and when we will combine these colors together, so the number of pigment genes are 4 in the case of purple color, and for this purple color only one plant is present. And for the dark red color, there are three genes, and total four plants are present. Similarly, for the red color, two genes and six plants are present. For light red, there is one gene and four plants are present. And when there is no pigment producing gene, then white color will be the phenotype of the kernels, and there is one genotype for this. So this experiment by Nelson is demonstrating that the kernel color in wheat is inherited according to the Mendelian principle. But Nelson was very lucky in getting these results. So from the results of Nelson, we can conclude that the when number of loci are increasing, so complexity is also increasing. For example, if we have only one locus, then there are three distinct phenotypes. So but when we have two loci, number of uh, phenotypes are now increasing, and there are five different phenotypes, but it is still manageable. But when there are five loci, there is a range of variation, and when there are many loci, it further complicates the association of different genotypes and phenotypes. So the number of when the number of loci increases, the number of genotype is also increasing, and then it is very difficult to assign different genotypes to different phenotypes. So several conditions of the Nelson's cross greatly simplified the polygenic inheritance of kernel color in wheat. So polygenic inheritance of kernel color in wheat, uh, studied by the Nelson, is an example of the quantitative trait which is following the Mendel's rules of heredity, and several conditions which made it possible for the Nelson to recognize the Mendelian nature of the characteristics are: so first one is that genes affecting kernel color segregated at only two or three loci. So if the kernel color would have been a multi-locus trait, then it would have not been possible for the Nelson to work out this this thing. So if genes at many loci had been segregating, he would have had difficulty in distinguishing the phenotypic classes. And second condition is that the genes affecting kernel color had strictly additive effects. So additive effect of the genes was another advantage for the Nelson, because it makes the relation between genotype and phenotype very simple, and genotypes were easily uh, associated uh, with different phenotypes because of their additive effect. And the third condition was that environment was having almost no role in producing the phenotype. So if environmental factors had were there, then uh, in modifying the phenotypes, then distinguishing between the five phenotypes would have been also very difficult for the Nelson. And finally the loci that Nelson studied were not linked, so they were genes were assorting independently. So if they would have been linked, then it would have also a complication, and he would not have ended up with these results. So Nelson was very lucky in demonstrating the example of kernel color in wheat. So Nelson was fortunate. So for many polygenic characteristics, these simplifying conditions are not present, and Mendelian inheritance of these characteristics is not obvious. So, uh, just like Nelson, uh, there are uh, Nelson was fortunate, but there are many traits which are polygenic, but uh, simplifying conditions are not present for those traits. Therefore, those traits cannot be studied like Mendelian inheritance. So, uh, Mendel was also lucky, and Nelson was also lucky in this regard that they had selected. Fortunately, they selected the traits which were not uh, having linked genes, and they were not affected by the environmental factors also, and therefore they succeeded in giving the explanations of the rules of heredity. So now coming towards the determining the number of genes for a polygenic trait. So when two individual homozygotes for different alleles at single locus are crossed, then for example A1 is crossed with A2 and the resulting F1 are interbred. So heterozygotes are produced. One fourth of the when F1 individuals are crossed, one fourth of the F2 should be homozygous like each of the original parent. So if the original parents are homozygous for different alleles at two loci, as are those of the Nelson's crosses, then 1 by 16 of the F2 should resemble one of the original homozygous parents. So generally 1 by 4 whole power n will be the number of individuals in the F2 progeny that should resemble each of the original parents. So, where n equals the number of loci with segregating pair of alleles that affect the characteristics. So, this equation provides us with a possible means of determining the number of loci influencing a quantitative characteristics. So, for example, if we have assumed that we cross two different homozygous varieties of pea plants that differ in height by 16 centimeter. So, when F1 are interbred and find that approximately 1 by 256 of the F2 are similar to one of the original parental varieties. So, this outcome would suggest that 4 loci with segregating pair of alleles are responsible for height difference between the two varieties. So because the two homozygous strains differ in height by 16 centimeter and there are 4 loci each with 2 alleles, there are total 8 alleles. So each of the allele contributes 2 centimeter in height. So uh, this method of determining the number of loci affecting phenotypic differences require the use of homozygous strains, and this is very difficult to obtain in some organisms. So it also assumes that all the genes influencing the characteristics have equal effects, that their effects are additive, and that the loci are linked and the loci are unlinked, and this is also very difficult for many polygenic uh, characteristics. These assumptions are not valid. So this method of determining the number of genes affecting a characteristic has limited application. So this method of finding number of genes is only limited to some simplified traits where genes are unlinked and uh, they have no environmental effects, etc. So it is enough for today's lecture. See you in online question answer session. Thank you.